So I've talked about the Texans enough. The real stars of the show were obviously the Chiefs. Not only did they score 41 unanswered points down by 24, but they did it in a spectacular fashion. Mahomes looks absolutely elite. There's really no one I could think of that could do some of the plays he does. We had like the no look pass and things last year, but at the end of the day, those are all kind of gimmicky. But when you watch his game, he's playing at a level that I've only really been able to compare to Aaron Rodgers, where he could make passes to certain players that only that player could ever catch. And I think that's something that really shows how incredible he is. I wouldn't compare him to Rodgers necessarily. I think he's a contention to be the best of all time with Jackson. I think for the next decade, it's going to be Jackson and Mahomes going neck and neck at each other, similar to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning going back and forth with each other. I think they're going to be competing to see who's going to be the best among them, who's going to be the best quarterback in the league, and they could be competing for who is the best player to ever play this game. Very early to be saying those kind of things, but if you're talking about floor, which is something more reasonable to think of with a player like Mahomes, I think his floor is something like a Russell Wilson or maybe a young Ben Roethlisberger when he used to scramble a lot. And that's a fantastic floor. We consider Russell Wilson to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and I'll talk about that in the next game. But one of the things that really made me curious in this game is why Tyreek Hill just disappeared. I assume it's because Kelsey was just on fire and they didn't need him to play or do anything. But it still seems like when they were down by 24, throwing the ball to Hill once or twice might have been helpful to them. The duo of Kelsey and Hill reminds me a lot of Gronk being paired up with either Wes Welker or Julian Edelman. I don't think Hill is really similar in style to Welker or Edelman. I think he's more of a deep threat than either of those players are, even though they had their times when they shined. But just in the role and comparing it in terms of Kelsey playing in that Gronk role, I don't think there's any doubt that Kelsey is probably the best tight end in the league right now. You could, I guess, argue with Kittle and Ertz. Kelsey's done it for longer, so that's why I would give him the crown over them. Aside from that, the receiver drops that were terrifying at the beginning of the game are something that hopefully was just the rust coming off after the bye week and things like that, because if they're making drops like that next week, it's going to be big issues for them. I also think the Chiefs' defense is super underrated. After that 24-point lead, they completely halted the Texans and didn't let them do anything for a couple quarters. So I think that Chiefs' defense is something that people look past, and their real challenge is going to be Derrick Henry. Can they do anything against Derrick Henry next week? We'll soon find out. If they could somehow keep him even at this point, I think a team keeping him under 100 yards and 1 touchdown would be a huge, huge success. And if the Chiefs do that, I think a lot more people will realize that they're a lot better than we've given them credit for. One last player I'll talk about in this game, Damian Williams, I think has enough juice to be the Chiefs running back. And I'm not saying he's going to ever put the team on his back, be a bell cow, do it all for them, and carry them in a game. I don't think he could play at a level like a Derrick Henry, a Zeke Elliott, a Saquon Barkley. But I think he's good enough that with all the other weapons and pieces around him, he could do enough rushing to set up a play action and get a couple yards, put his head down, and get a touchdown at the goal line. I think he has that capability. I was trying to think of a good comp for him, and for some reason the comp I was thinking of was Ahmad Bradshaw with Victor Cruz and stuff, which makes no sense, but I don't think it's hard to comp players that are just adequate. We get a lot of adequate running backs, and he's not, I don't think, a difference maker. There's a reason why Miami wasn't even a good enough spot for him to get carries, so I don't think he's a franchise all-star running back for them, but I think he'll be good enough. And if they're looking for a running back, there's a guy named Kareem Hunt they could always bring back. Moving on to Seahawks-Packers. Packers beat them 28-23. And the Seahawks continue to be a disappointing team. I genuinely feel bad for Russell Wilson at this point. He deserves so much better than what he's been dealing with in that team. It just seems like the coaching has been all about these running backs and stuff, and the running backs did good. Their committee worked. I don't think it worked at the same level as the 49ers, but the Carson, Rashad Penny, CJ Procise thing was okay when they were all healthy. Now that they don't have those players that are at least good enough, the committee of Marshawn Lynch, Robert Turbin, and Travis Homer is clearly not working well for them. I still question why they chose out of all running backs in the NFL and out of the NFL to bring back Lynch. I really think it was just for the gimmick and the fun of bringing back Lynch, bringing him home, giving him those goal line carries, because beyond putting his head down and falling into the end zone, he wasn't bringing a lot to the game. And I hate to say that because Lynch is one of my favorite players of all time in terms of as a person and even on the field with the beast quake and things like that. I think he's fantastic, but I think his time has passed, and I think they would have been better off picking up a guy out of free agency that we haven't heard of this year that did something more recently. Maybe even like a CJ Anderson would have been able to help them a little more than Lynch has this year, just because he looked super out of shape with the feast mode and all that. At the end of the day, I think what the best move for them would be is to do a more even thing with the running back and receiving, because Russell Wilson can lead that team. He can be the main piece of that team, similar to a Drew Brees kind of thing. I don't think that's the best comp for him. I think he could be that elite level, but between Russell Wilson's ability, he can run a little bit. I also think that the receivers are definitely showing that they're more than capable. Metcalf, I talked about last week, he could be a beast in this league. And Lockett, I have my doubts about, I would say I still have my doubts about Lockett long term. I think he's getting up there in age. But right now they look reminiscent of when Julio Jones was starting to come into his own and Roddy White was aging but still getting it done when he needed to. That kind of duo right now, that's a very powerful type duo. That's what made Matt Ryan a franchise quarterback, was having a duo like that to work with. And I think if Russell Wilson is given the opportunity to just toss it to Metcalf and Lockett at his will, I think that the team would be more successful. Moving on to the Packers, the best way I could describe the Packers is that they're good enough. And good enough is just that. It's good enough. They're winning games. Their record was good. But they never blew out a team they should blow out. They never beat a team that was super difficult that no one expected them to beat. It was just nothing flashy, nothing special. They're just good enough, and they just keep winning, which is fine. You can get a Super Bowl ring that way. But it doesn't look great. They're definitely the worst 13-3 team I've ever seen. They're definitely the worst divisional winning team that I've ever seen. And Rodgers really looks like he's lost a step. I was hoping that the issues were really in Mike McCarthy causing issues and not giving Rodgers what he wanted and things like that. But Rodgers doesn't look like the same Rodgers we've really known the past couple of years. And I think it's too soon to say he's ready to retire. He's too old for the game. But I think we've seen his peak. And from here on out, we could only see him go downhill, which is very disappointing. And it emphasizes that this team needs to win a Super Bowl as soon as they possibly can before Rodgers completely falls off a cliff. And that year might have to be this year. They might need to figure a way out to win it this year, because I don't know how much longer Rodgers can carry the team. I think he's very good. I think he could play for another 10 years if he wanted to, but he could play for another 10 years the same way we've seen Tom Brady play the past couple of years, where he's not great, but he locks in on his guy and he gets it done. Speaking of his guy, Adams, I believe, is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league right now. I don't know how many people consider him a top 5, but I think there's no doubt in my mind he's a top 5 wide receiver in this league. And he's the only show in town for the Green Bay Packers. All their other wide receivers have been complete disappointments so far. Equanimous St. Brown, MVS. They haven't seen anything out of Jake Kumaro. I feel like they've had a lot of players shift around, do things. Geronimo Allison didn't show anything this year. They need a second wide receiver to step up, take the mantle. I don't think it's Allen Lazard. Besides him doing a couple flashy things mid-season, he never had a great game. And I also think this is a team that is almost the opposite of the Seahawks in the sense of they rely so heavily on the receivers when not having as much receiving talent as they need to. While they have one of the top running backs in the game right now as far as ability, I think Aaron Jones is absolutely fantastic, and I think in his second half of the season, we've really seen him unleashed with all the touchdowns. I don't think I would put him in the caliber of Zeke Elliott, Derrick Henry, but that next tier down, most likely, I would put him in there with the Nick Chubbs of the world. I would put him somewhere around a Dalvin Cook level guy. I think he's good enough to be a franchise player and put the team on his back when he needs to. And the great thing is he doesn't need to because he has Aaron Rodgers right now and he has Devontae Adams right now. He's the first time, I can't remember the last time a Packers running back has impressed me. Amon Green is probably the last player that ran the ball for the Green Bay Packers I could think of that was a quality running back. I'm not going to say it's Cedric Benson, James Starks. We're not talking about Eddie Lacy. And at the end of the day, if this team wants to win the Super Bowl, it's pretty much now or never. They might have a season or two more, but if they want to do it, I think right now is their best shot. I think that they could win against the 49ers and get to the Super Bowl, and then it's just a matter of coaching and game planning with whoever comes out between the Tennessee Titans and the Kansas City Chiefs. With that, I know this video went very long. I know I definitely got loud and excited in the middle of the video. Sorry if you had to mess with your volume throughout. But I think I've pretty much wrapped up and said what I need to say. I'm going to scroll through my show sheet one more time to make sure I didn't miss anything because it felt like I went fast even though it's been 25 minutes. But I think I got everything. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another episode, of course. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Talk to you later.